The purpose of this room is to shed light on the zero logon vulnerability within an educational focus. This is done such that defenders can better understand the threat faced herein. The zero logon vulnerability is approached from a proof of concept emphasis, providing a breakdown of the vulnerable method within this issue. TryHackMe does not condone illegal actions taken on the part of the individual. Zero logon, the zero-day angle about the vulnerability. On the 14th of September, Secura released a white paper for CVE 2020-1472, that allowed an attacker to go from zero to domain admin in approximately 1 minute. They dubbed this vulnerability Zero Logon. Zero Logon is a purely statistics-based attack that abuses a feature within MSNRPC, Microsoft NetLogon Remote Protocol. MSNRPC is a critical authentication component of Active Directory that handles authentication for user and machine accounts. In short, the attack mainly focuses on a poor implementation of cryptography. To be more specific, Microsoft chose to use AES-CFB8 for a function called Compute NetLogon Credential, which is normally fine, except they had hard-coded the initialization vector to use all zeros instead of a random string. When an attacker sends a message only containing zeros with the 4 of 0, there is a 1 in 256 chance that the ciphertext will be 0. But how is that useful to us? We'll touch on that note in the following sections. About machine accounts. Normally, if we tried a statistics-based attack on any user account, we would get locked out. This is not the case if we apply this principle to machine accounts. Machines accounts behave in a much different way than standard user accounts. They have no predefined account lockout attempts because a 64+ character alphanumeric password is normally used to secure them, making them very difficult to break into. They are not meant to be accessed by an end user by any means. In certain circumstances, we can dump the machine account password using a tool like Mimikatz, but if we're at that point, we've already compromised the machine and we're looking for persistence within the domain, not lateral movement. Abusing the vulnerability, machine accounts often hold system-level privileges which we can use for a variety of things. If you're not familiar with Active Directory, we can take the domain controller's machine account and attempt to use the granted authentication in conjunction with secretsdump.py. Secretsdump is a password dumping utility like Mimikatz, except it lives on the network instead of the host, to dump all of the passwords within the domain. At this point we have a rough kill chain starting to form. Use Zero Logon to bypass authentication on the domain controller's machine account. Run secretsdump.py to dump credentials. Crack /pass domain admin hashes. Profit analyzing the MSNRPC logon process. At this point, we know a vulnerability exists, but we're not quite sure how to exploit it yet. We'll be covering that soon, but what we do know, there's a vulnerability within the way Microsoft handles authentication within Compute NetLogon Credential function of MSNRPC. To better understand the vulnerability, we need to do a bit of a deeper dive on how Microsoft handles authentication to NRPC. To analyze where the vulnerability occurs, we'll be using the diagram provided by Secura as well as Microsoft documentation to decipher the magic behind Zero Logon. The sources can be found at the bottom of this task. Step 1. The client creates a NetServerEC challenge and sends it off. Figure 1. Step 1. This contains the following values: 1 the DC, 2 the target device, also the DC, in our case, 3. A nonce, in our case is 16 bytes of 0. Step 2. The server receives the NetServerEC challenge. The server will then generate its own nonce. This is called the server challenge. The server will send the server challenge back. Figure 1. Step 2. Step 3. The client, us, will compute its NetLogon credentials with the server challenge provided. Figure 1. Step 3. It uses the NetServer Authenticate 3 method, which requires the following parameters. 1. A custom binding handle. Impacket handles this for us. It's negotiated prior. 2. An account name. The domain controller's machine account name. X, DC01. 3. A secure channel type. Impacket sort of handles this for us, but we still need to specify it. nrpc.netlogon_secure_channel_type.server secure channel. 4. The computer name. the domain controller x, DC015. The client credential string, this will be 8 hexdets of \x00, 16 bytes of 0, 6. Negotiation flags, the following value observed from a Win10 client with sign/seal flags disabled, 0x212FFF provided by Secura. Step 4. The server will receive the Neta server authenticate request and will compute the same request itself using its known, good values. If the results are good, the server will send the required info back to the client. Figure 1. Step 4. At this point the attempt to exploit the zero logon vulnerability is underway. The above steps above will be looped through a certain number of times to attempt to exploit the zero logon vulnerability. The actual exploit occurs at step 3 and 4, this where we're hoping for the server to have the same computations as the client. This is where our 1 in 256 chance comes in. Step 5. If the server calculates the same value, the client will re-verify, and once mutual agreement is confirmed, they will agree on a session key. The session key will be used to encrypt communications between the client and the server, which means authentication is successful. Figure 1. Step 5. From there, normal RPC communications can occur. Impacket installation git clone Impacket. As a prior warning, Impacket can be quite fussy when it comes to some modules within nrpc.py. Because of this, we recommend using the TryHackMe attack box. This will make the exploit run faster. Additionally, we can attempt to provide better support via the attack box. Additionally, we are going to be using a virtual environment to install Impacket. The instructions to install Impacket are as follows. POSI and U, proof of concepts, are incredibly important to every exploit. Without them, the exploits are almost entirely theoretical. Fortunately, Secura was able to provide a working proof of concept for zero logon that was 90% of the way there. We simply need to make an additional call to change the password to a null value. Recall figure 3 from task 1. Secura was even kind enough to give us the method that we need to call, Neta server password set to. Looking up the method within the Microsoft documentation, it's very similar to netserver authenticate 3, so we're going to reuse some of the same variables from that, as well as the structure. Analyzing the POSI. Before we continue any further, you should download the POSI from Secura, which can be found here. The script may seem quite daunting at first, but it's quite simple. If you think back to figure 1 from task 1, you'll quickly see how it all starts to fit together. Let's start by breaking the POSI down. We're going to be this in order of execution / importance so it's easier to digest. Lines 1 to 4 import the required modules from Impacket, specifically the nrpc, EPM, crypto, and transport libraries. Additionally, on lines 6 to 8 a handful of other MISC libraries are also imported. However, the Impacket libraries are the star of the show here. Lastly, on line 9, we're defining a constant, similar to a variable, but never changes, that sets the maximum number of retries for zero logon to 2000. Next we skip down to the very bottom of the script so some other variables will make sense later. Line 1 is essentially declaring a main function within Python. Line 2 we are checking for the amount of parameters, and ensuring that it's exactly 3, 0 logon_tester.py name IP. Lines 3 to 5 are printing the help menu only if it's greater than 3 arguments, or less than 2 and exiting. If the required arguments are supplied, on line 8 the arguments are being passed into two variables, DC_name, and DC_IP. After the arguments are passed, DC_name is being stripped of the $character, as the DC_name variable shouldn't have it. The user account name should, however. Afterwards, it's passing the variables, two variables and an additional, modified variable into a module called perform_attack. Line 1 is defining where the variables are being passed into for the local function. \_name is being passed into the DC_handle variable, DC_IP is being passed into DC_IP variable, and DC_name is being passed into the target_computer variable. All of which will be used later, or passed into different modules. Line 4 sets the variable rpc_con equal to none. This will be kept track of consistently to check and see if authentication is successful. If it's not, the script will continue until 2000 retries is hit. Line 5 is where the actual retries for 0 logon occurs in the form of a for loop. Line 6 sets the rpc_con variable to the output of a different function called try_0_authenticate with a couple of variables being passed to it, specifically DC_handle, DC_IP, and target_computer. All of which we addressed earlier. The next lines are simply checking if rpc_con is equal to an invalid login attempt. If it is, print equals; if not, print success; if 2000 retries is hit, print attack failed. Line 1 is defining the try_0_authenticate function and is taking the previously mentioned three variables as input, and is passing them into the function. Lines 3 to 6 are establishing a bind and a session with nrpc over TCP/IP so that we can communicate with the domain controller. Line 1 and 2 are establishing two new variables, plaintext and ciphertext containing 16 bytes of \x00 which will be used to exploit the 0 logon vulnerability. Line 4 contains a variable called flags. These are the default flags observed from a Windows 10 client, using AES-CFB8, with the sign and seal bit disabled, source/credit, securer. Line 6 is where the fun beings. This is where step 1 beings in figure 1, the client creates a NETA server rec challenge containing the following information required by the Microsoft documentation. The primary name being the DC handle, the computer name being the target computer, and the client challenge being 16 bytes of \x00. And the client will receive back, which will be used in figure 1, step 2. Lines 8 sets up a try except. We'll see the rest of that in the next few lines, but in line 9 is where we actually attempt to exploit the 0 logon vulnerability. This would be figure 1, step 3. This section requires a fair bit more information. Per the Microsoft documentation for NETA Server Authenticate 3, the following is required. On line 9, we supply the DC_handle as the primary name, the target computer plus $, as the machine account name. Recall, machine accounts do not have lockout policies. The secure channel type as the secure channel type previously established over RPC, the target_computer variable as the computer name, the ciphertext, 16 bytes of \x00 attempting to abuse 0 logon. Remember there's 1 in 256 chance that the ciphertext will be the same as the plaintext, and lastly, our flags variable that mimics those of a Windows 10 client machine. Additionally, we expect to receive 2, possibly 3, things back from the server upon, hopefully, successful exploitation of 0 logon, the server credential and account read, only one of which we are going to use. Line 1 is retrieving the error code from the server_auth variable, or the variable assigned to establish an authentication session with the target device. If successful, we're going to return the RPC_con variable, which will inform us that we have successfully bypassed authentication with 0 logon. Lines 3 to 12 are simply error handling lines, so the program doesn't break and exit after receiving an error back. End of transmission. What's next? And that's all there is to the proof of concept. It's not some giant, scary monster. It even successfully exploits the 0 logon vulnerability for us, but it stops and doesn't do anything further. So how do we proceed? Good question. Next we need to take a look at the Microsoft documentation itself and see what we can do to interact with NRPC itself. If you're not familiar with NRPC, and you're not that technical of an individual, look back at the last step in Task 1, Figure 3, hint, it tells us what we need to do. What's it all mean, Doc? After going back and peeking at Figure 3 on Task 1, or researching how to reset a password over RDP, you should have came across the following document, HTTP URL. The document outlines what information is required to change a password over NRPC. The following information is required to do so. Going back and looking at NetaServer Authenticate 3 and NetaServer Password Set 2, we already have a handful of the information required, like the primary name, account name, secure channel type, and the computer name. So we simply need two values, the authenticator and the clear new password value. Both of these are documented from Microsoft, so let's take a look at the authenticator first. And suddenly we've hit another unknown, netlogon_credential. Fortunately, Microsoft does have documentation for netlogon_credential as well. Per the documentation, netlogon_credential can take 8 bytes of data. The second bullet point outlines that the data field carries 8 bytes of encrypted data, as specified in the netlogon credential computation. Fortunately we know this value, thanks to 0 logon, it's 8 bytes of 0. In terms of the timestamp, it's 8-word value, so it can either be a 1 or a 0. 0 sounds perfectly fine to me. In order to change the password, the Microsoft documentation states that the netlogon password consists of 512 bytes of random padding, minus the length of the password, so junk and password, with the last 4 bytes indicating the length of the password, totaling 516 bytes. For the simplicity of this room, we can simply supply 516 bytes of all 00 to make a null password. Eventually, we can work towards creating our own custom password, but once again, for simplicity, we're setting it to a null value now. Level up. Now that we know the required arguments to change the password via NRPC, we actually have to implement it in Python. We need to take a look at the nrpc.py module within Impacket to see the required structure for how we can craft a NetaServer passwords A2 request. As expected, most of the field names are the same as what Microsoft provided, except with some differences. Next, we need to know how to structure the authenticator portion as well. The format here is a little bit different compared to the prior, but we'll adjust accordingly when we go to slot it into the POC. But while we're talking about slotting it into the POC, where will our added code go? Our added code will go immediately before return RPC_con on line 45. This is where we know we have successful authentication. We want to grab that before we return to the previous function and terminate the RPC connection. Now that we know all the required information that we'll need to add to the POC, we'll save you the painstaking effort of writing your own code, and you can use the pre-written code below. The above explanations should help aid in understanding it.
Hey everyone, welcome back to all of which will be the zero logon vulnerability. Successful code from the server underscore auth variable or the when we're abusing all of this. And reading a little bit further into this, but this is how we went through and took all those and we're able to bring it back into the POC. Per the documentation, netlogon underscore correct, which makes things a little bit easier. You can just copy this and use it further to just go through the room. So what method will allow us to change passwords over an RPC? That is going to be this method, as I mentioned before. So this is how we're actually going to go through and reset that machine password to null. So what are the required fields for the method per the Microsoft documentation? We can grab all those from right here. The first one is going to be primary name. And then we'll go ahead and grab, it's going to be account name. And then we have secure channel type. And let's see, we need the computer name. Computer name, and then we're going to grab the authenticator and the return authenticator. Authenticator, return authenticator, and then we need one more item, which is going to be the clear new password. So clear new password. And this next one's nice and easy. What op number is the method? We can see that here at the top with the op num of 30. And then we have one more thing. We need to modify the POC, which if you were following along, which is going to be the clear new password. And then we're going to grab the
Now that you've learned about zero logon, it's time to put your newfound skills to the test and exploit this vulnerable domain controller. After you get done, if you want to play around some more, instead of terminating the machine, you can simply issue the following command to reset the machine back to its original state. If you're confused on how to issue the command, you can simply pass the local admin hash with evilwin to gain command execution. You can do so with the following command.
Step. And we're going to go ahead and move on to task 4, which is going to be lab it up. So time to play. Now that you've learned about Zero Logon, it's time to put your newfound skills to the test and exploit this vulnerable domain controller. So you can click deploy here. In my case, I've gone ahead and already started this up. And in this case, I've already gone ahead and taken care of testing this against the machine to make sure everything is working. So after you're done, if you want to play around a little bit more, instead of terminating the machine, you can simply issue the following command to reset the machine back to its original state. So once you have an evil WinRM shell open, you can use the PowerShell.exe with this command reset computer machine password to actually fix what you've just done. And if you're confused on how to issue this command, again, you can use evil WinRM, which is installed by default in the attack box. So with this, I do recommend, again, go through with the attack box open. Make sure you've installed inpacket as specified in task 2 of this room. Otherwise, you're going to have probably a bad time. So first, we need to go through and scan this the actual domain controller that we're going to be attacking to get these first 3 answers. So the first thing that we need is the NetBIOS name of the domain controller. And if we jump over, we can see that I've already run the scan against this, and we can see that we have the NetBIOS scan here. Let me go ahead, I'll scroll up so you can see what command I ended up using. So nmap-s capital V-sc. So this is going to be version enumeration. This is going to be common scripts, and then I've saved the output here. So we can go through, and don't worry about this IP not matching yours. Common scripts, and then I've saved the output. Scripts, and then I've saved. Save the output here. So we can go through, and don't worry about this IP not matching yours. This should work just fine. So we can go ahead and grab this, which is going to be our NetBIOS. domain name, so DC01, and we're going to hop back over here, DC01, and then we need the NetBIOS domain name of the network. And if we go back, we can see that it looks like we don't have it. Actually, we do here. So it's going to be hololive, and then we have hololive.local. For our last one here. And then the domain that we're attacking is hololive.local. And then for these last three, we actually need to go ahead and run the exploit. And in this case, I've gone ahead and installed it, and I've activated my virtual environment, and we can go up and grab. So I need to adjust this just a little bit to run it against our target machine. So 10, 10, 78, 38. And we can take a look at just how fast this can be. So we'll give it just a moment, and there we go. We can see that almost instantaneously it's gone ahead and exploited 0 logon, and it's changed the password to be a blank value. I know, blinking, you might miss it. And then we'll go back, and I'm going to go ahead, and just so you can see the command again, that is the command that I use to run the 0logon.py. And we'll run secretsdump.py to pull the secrets off of this target machine. We'll give it just a moment. And here we can see that it successfully pulled these secrets off the machine, so we can either attempt to pass these, which we are going to do here in just a moment with the evil WinRM, or you can attempt to crack them, which realistically in a pen test environment you do want to attempt to crack these, but if you can pass them, you will. Now let's see. What is the local administrator's NTLM hash? If we go back, we can go back in here. And we'll grab, so the second part here is going to be, I'm going to go ahead and just so you can see and run the exploit. And in this case, I've gone ahead and installed it, and I've activated my virtual environment, and we can go up and grab. So I need to adjust this just a little bit to run it against our target machine. So 10, 10, 78, 38. And we can take a look at just how fast this can be. And then we'll go back, and I'm going to go ahead, and just so you can see the command again, that is the command that I use to run the 0logon.py. And we'll run secretsdump.py to pull the secrets off of this target machine. We'll give it just a moment. And here we can see that it successfully pulled these secrets off the machine, so we can either attempt to pass these, which we are going to do here in just a moment with the evil WinRM admin account. And in this case, we can see that there are, and we'll do that against 78.38. And I think that should be the same hash. Yes, it is. And we can go ahead and run that. And there we go. Now we have a shell, and you can see how very quickly this exploit went from 0 access to us being the local administrator of this machine. Very scary, very fast. Definitely something that luckily Microsoft has already patched this. Make sure that everything is patched, and make sure that you understand specifically what is going on that is being abused in this exploit.